My wife's family told her to leave me for a real man. Now she's begging me to come home after her dad screamed. You married a joke. At dinner, I just smiled and said, funny, this joke just bought a Tesla while you're driving her mom's 2002 Honda. Their faces dropped instantly. My name's Marlon. I'm 42, living in Denver, Colorado, and for the longest time, I believed I had carved out a stable, decent life. Not glamorous, not wild, but steady, reliable. That mattered to me more than anything else. Consistency, peace, and just enough room to grow at my own pace. I run a cybersecurity consulting business, mostly for mid-sized companies that want their data locked down but don't have an in-house guy. It's not the kind of work you brag about at cocktail parties, but it pays well, and there's satisfaction in it. Problem solving. Quiet wins. I never needed a spotlight, and I was okay with being misunderstood by people who judged worth by noise. I met Celine on a Saturday afternoon in the city. There was a food truck event off Colfax and 16th. She was waiting in line at a Vietnamese fusion truck, and I was behind her. She ordered with confidence, laughed when they ran out of the duck tacos, and shrugged it off like nothing. I admired that ease, that grace. When she turned to me and said, you should try the lemongrass pork. Life's too short to be boring. I didn't even hesitate. I nodded, ordered what she suggested, and before I knew it, we were sitting on the curb sharing bites of each other's lunch. It started from there. Slow, natural. We talked a lot. Went for walks along the Cherry Creek Trail. She loved thrift stores. I loved seeing her light up when she found something vintage and weird and wonderful. We moved in together after a year. Got married a year after that. Small wedding in Estes Park. Just friends. No drama, no pomp. But I should have seen it back then. The signs that her family never saw me as enough. They didn't come to the wedding. Not because they weren't invited. They just didn't approve. Her dad, Franklin, said over the phone, if Celine wants to marry a boy with a laptop and a hobby, I guess we'll just have to accept that. I remember Celine crying that night, curled up in our tiny one-bedroom. She swore she didn't care. She said, it's us. Just us. That's all that matters. And I believed her. But people can say they've broken free from their families and still carry those voices inside them, like echoes that never fade. As the years passed, her family crept into the cracks of our marriage. At first, it was small things. Comments during phone calls that made her quiet afterward. Suggestions that she could have done better. That she settled. We bought a modest townhouse in Lakewood. I turned the basement into a home office and Celine made the upstairs beautiful. She had a knack for interior design, even if she never pursued it professionally. She wanted kids, eventually, but we agreed we needed to feel ready. Ready never came. Instead, the distance started to build. I worked long hours. She spent more weekends with her parents or sisters. I was fine with that, mostly. I never liked being around Franklin or Inez. Franklin had that sharp, military stiffness, like every room he entered had to answer to him. Inez smiled constantly, but had a tone behind every word, like a velvet blade. You never knew where the cuts would land until you were already bleeding. When Celine started echoing their thoughts, that's when the damage really began. She started questioning the way I did things. You're so passive, Marlon, she said one night after we had dinner with her family. You don't speak up. You just sit there. They think you're weak. That stung. Because she wasn't wrong, I did stay quiet. I let their comments slide because I thought it was better than fighting. I thought if I just kept showing them stability, showing them love through consistency, they'd come around. But the silence they read as weakness was actually me choosing peace. Choosing not to bite back. Still, it started to eat at me. I wasn't good enough in their eyes. And worse, I was slowly becoming not good enough in hers. She started comparing me to other people. Subtly at first. You know, Terrence got promoted to VP last month, she said one afternoon while scrolling through Instagram. Michelle's really proud of him. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. But over time, it grew louder. Maybe we need to think about upgrading the car. People notice these things. I just feel like I'm the only one pushing us to grow. I'd been saving for something big. Quietly. We had no debt. No credit card balances. I was investing everything into a long-term portfolio and setting aside for a new car, a better place, a future. But I never told her that. Because I didn't think I needed to prove my worth with receipts. I was wrong. The final blow came on a Sunday evening. Celine invited me to dinner at her parents' house in Boulder. She said it was important to her. No drama, I promise. Just family. Against my better judgment, I went. Everyone was there. Her sisters, their husbands, her parents. They all looked like they were performing some play. Clinking glasses, throwing polite smiles, compliments that sounded like veiled criticisms. I brought a bottle of wine. Franklin scoffed when he saw it. Merlot, huh? Playing it safe, I see. I laughed politely. Let it go. Dinner was roast beef, mashed potatoes, and overcooked asparagus. Everyone passed plates and avoided eye contact. It felt rehearsed. Then it began. Franklin leaned forward, elbows on the table, napkin folded like a general's briefing. So Marlon, he said, what exactly do you do again? I always forget. I repeated my answer. Cybersecurity consultant. Contracted to companies across the region. Data protection, risk management, threat detection. He snorted. So you scare companies into thinking they need you, huh? The room laughed. Celine didn't. I felt the blood rising in my ears, but I swallowed it. Again, Franklin wasn't done. He set down his fork and said, Celine, I still don't understand why you married him. You're brilliant. You're beautiful. You could have had a real man. You married a damn joke. Time slowed. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Every eye was on me. Every fork frozen in midair. But Celine said nothing. Not a single word in my defense. I looked at her, and her gaze was low. Her mouth was tight-mouthed tight. Like she agreed, or at the very least, didn't care enough to disagree. That's what broke me. I smiled. Not wide. Just enough to show my teeth. Funny, I said. This joke just bought a Tesla in cash. While you're still driving Inez's 2002 Honda with duct tape on the mirror. It was surgical. The silence after? Beautiful. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and left. No yelling. No door slam. Just the click of my shoes on the hardwood and the weight of every insult I'd let slide for years finally lifting off my shoulders. I didn't go home that night. I booked a hotel in downtown Denver, sat on the rooftop, and stared at the skyline. And I let myself feel angry. Not just at them. At myself. For shrinking. For letting love make me small. For choosing someone who needed me to become something I wasn't just to earn their respect. Celine called the next day. I didn't answer. She texted. Said she was sorry. That she didn't expect things to go that way. That her dad crossed a line. I asked her one question. Why didn't you speak up? She didn't respond for hours. When she finally did, it was one sentence. Because I didn't know what to say. That said everything. More months passed. I focused on work. I hired a part-time assistant. Expanded into Texas. Bought the Tesla? Yeah, but not to prove anything. Just because I'd earned it. I moved into a new condo with big windows and quiet mornings. Celine texted occasionally. Nothing dramatic. Just small check-ins. Soft apologies. I ignored most of them. Sometimes I responded, but only with kindness. No hate. Just space. Then one day, she showed up at my office. And that's where things started shifting again. She looked different when she walked in. Not in a superficial way. She still wore the same pale green scarf I remembered. Still had her hair pulled into that same careless bun that made her look younger than she was. But her face looked softer. Like something inside had finally settled, or maybe broken in a necessary way. The kind of change that doesn't show up all at once, but sneaks in after enough quiet nights spent alone with your own thoughts. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood at the door to my office like she wasn't sure if she belonged there anymore. I was reviewing a contract, half-finished coffee beside me, when I looked up and saw her silhouette. Hey, she said finally. I nodded, slowly setting the papers aside. Didn't expect to see you. I know, she said, stepping in. I almost turned around twice. I didn't invite her to sit, but she found the chair across from me anyway. Pulled it out gently, like she was worried even the sound might be too much. I've been trying to think about what I'd say if I ever got a chance to sit here again, she said, eyes scanning the room like she was memorizing it. You painted. I did, I said. Too much light in here for that old beige. She smiled faintly. Looks better. We sat there, silence thick between us, but not hostile. Just full. Full of everything we hadn't said in months. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry, she said, finally locking eyes with me. Not just for that night. For before. For everything I didn't say when I should have. For not seeing what you were carrying. I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't just what you didn't say. It was what you started to believe. She looked down, pressing her palms together tightly, like she needed to feel something solid. I know, she said. I didn't even notice it at first. How their voices started becoming my own. My mom, my dad, even my sisters. It's like I woke up one day and realized I was measuring you with their ruler. And I never asked you to measure me at all, I said, quieter than I intended. That silence stretched again, but this time it didn't feel awkward. It felt necessary. I started going to therapy, she said. 3 months now. That caught me off guard. Not because she needed it. We all do, really. But because she'd always brushed off the idea. Said she could handle things on her own. That nothing was that deep. What changed? I asked. She exhaled, long and slow. You left. And I realized I didn't know who I was without their voices in my head. I didn't know what I believed or what I wanted. And the scariest part? I didn't even recognize who I was with you by the end. I turned you into someone to blame for everything I hated about myself. That one landed. Not like a slap. More like someone peeling back an old bandage you didn't realize was still covering a wound. And now? I asked. I don't know, she said honestly. I'm still figuring that out. But I knew I had to come here, to you, and say it. That I was wrong. That I failed you. And that if there's even the smallest chance, even a crack of space between all the damage, I'd like to fix it. I looked at her for a long time. Not just at her face, but at how she sat. How her hands fidgeted. How she waited without pressing. How she didn't fill the silence with apologies or promises or emotional pleas. Just waited. And in that stillness, I realized something I hadn't let myself think before. She wasn't the same person who watched her father insult me and stayed quiet. She looked like someone who had finally heard herself clearly for the first time and didn't like what she found. I don't know what this is, I said carefully, or where we are, but I'm not angry anymore. That doesn't mean I'm ready to go back. I need time to trust you again, to trust what we were. She nodded, eyes bright but steady. I'm not asking you to come back today or next week. I'm just asking for the chance to prove I'm not that person anymore. That I see you now, the way I should have seen you all along. I didn't respond. Not right away. I didn't need to. Somewhere deep inside me, something unclenched. Not forgiveness exactly, but the start of it. She stood slowly, tucked her scarf tighter around her shoulders. I'll go, she said. Just wanted you to hear it from me. She turned to the door, hesitated. Then I looked back. You were never a joke, Marlon, she said, voice trembling. I was just too busy trying to make other people laugh to realize I was losing the only person who ever made me feel safe. Then she left, and I sat there long after the door closed, staring at the wall. Not because I didn't know how I felt, but because, for the first time in a long time, I felt everything. All at once. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back, or if I even could. The next few weeks felt like I was living in a state of slow thaw. You know the feeling, like when winter finally starts giving way, and the snow outside your window doesn't melt all at once, but in quiet trickles. It was like that inside me. Everything I'd locked up, the hurt, the bitterness, the resentment, started to loosen its grip. Not disappear, just loosen. Celine didn't reach out after that visit. She didn't text, didn't call. It surprised me, to be honest. I half expected a follow-up message, some small attempt to keep the thread alive. But there was nothing. And somehow, that silence felt louder than anything else she could have said. It made me wonder if she really had changed, or if she finally understood that pushing me wouldn't bring me back. That gave me space. And in that space, I started to remember her in ways I hadn't for a long time. I remembered the way she used to leave notes on the fridge before I had early meetings. Dumb little jokes, or drawings of cartoon coffee mugs with tired eyes. I remembered her humming while she cleaned, her sock-socked feet sliding over the hardwood floor. I remembered the night we got caught in a thunderstorm on our way home from a brewery tour in Fort Collins and ended up dancing under a gas station canopy, soaked and laughing. We weren't always broken. That truth was as painful as it was comforting. One Saturday afternoon, I drove past the townhouse we used to share. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or curiosity. The porch still had the wind chime she hung up. The one she insisted didn't match anything but made her feel calm. It clinked lightly in the wind, as if time hadn't moved at all. But of course it had. It always does. That night, I sat at the kitchen table in my condo, opened my laptop, and started to write. Not to her. To myself. I wrote down everything I had never said out loud during our marriage. The things I held back to keep the peace. The small ways I folded myself to fit into her life. The things I wanted that I never asked for. I wrote for hours. And when I was done, I closed the file and just sat there, staring at the screen. I wasn't writing to make sense of her. I was trying to understand myself understand me. The next morning, I saw her. Not in person. I ran into her sister, Camille, at Union Station. She was picking up coffee, and I was on my way to meet a client. She spotted me before I saw her and waved me down. Camille was the middle sister. The quieter one. She'd never been cruel to me, not directly, but she always kept her distance, like she didn't want to pick sides in a war that hadn't started yet. Marlon, she said, handing her barista a tip. You look good. Thanks, I said cautiously. You too. We stood in the corner, surrounded by the buzz of Sunday travelers and brunchgoers. She told me she saw you, Camille said. At your office. I nodded. Yeah. She hasn't been the same since. I didn't know what to say to that. Was it a compliment? A warning? A guilt trip? Camille must have sensed my confusion because she added, it's not like before. I mean, she's trying. She's different now. Softer. She's been spending a lot of time alone. Less time with the family. That's probably for the best, I said flatly. Camille gave a small smile. Franklin doesn't know how to handle it. She doesn't answer his calls half the time. You'd think someone took his keys. We both laughed. A tired, honest laugh. She still loves you, she said, after a pause. I don't know if that helps or hurts. Depends on the day, I admitted. Camille glanced down at her cup, then back at me. If you ever talk to her again, don't let the version of her from that night be the only version you remember. She turned to go, then stopped. She bought a car, you know. Something old and ugly and definitely not family approved. I raised an eyebrow. A beat-up '98 Subaru. No Bluetooth. But she said it was the first car she ever picked out without asking for someone else's opinion. And then Camille was gone. I stood there for a while, letting her words sink in. Letting the image of Celine, alone in some rusty Subaru, sink in. And for the first time in a while, I wondered if maybe she wasn't just sorry. Maybe she was trying to rebuild something in herself. with or without me. A week later, I got a letter. Not a text, not an email. A real, handwritten letter, folded neatly inside a simple envelope. No return address. Just my name in her handwriting. Tight, slanted, familiar. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The paper smelled like the lavender soap she always used. The letter wasn't long, but it was honest. She talked about the therapy sessions, the things she uncovered, the parts of herself she had ignored for too long. She wrote about the shame she carried, about the way her father's approval had once been her compass, until she realized it always pointed her somewhere she didn't want to go. She wrote, "You didn't fail me, Marlon. I failed myself. And in doing that, I failed you." There was a line near the end that stuck with me. "I still love you, but I understand now that love isn't always enough. You gave me stability and kindness and space to be myself. And I used that space to let others define you instead of cherishing the version of you I actually knew. I don't know if I deserve another chance. But if you ever want to sit in silence with someone who's learning how to listen, I'll be here." I folded the letter carefully. Didn't cry. Didn't feel relief. Just sat there. Still. Everything was still. And for the first time in a long time, that stillness didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like a choice I hadn't made yet. And I was okay not making it. Not yet. I didn't write her back right away. I didn't rush to see her. I let her letter sit on my desk for almost a month. I'd glance at it while working or when I was sipping coffee in the morning. Sometimes I'd pick it up, unfold it, read it again. Other times I just left it alone. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was just waiting until I could read her words without the echo of that dinner table in my ears. Without hearing Franklin's voice, without seeing her eyes go to the floor when he called me a joke. The truth is, I didn't want revenge. Not the angry kind. I didn't want to throw back all the times they made me feel small or ruin their lives or win in some loud, dramatic way. I just wanted peace. And then one day, an opportunity presented itself. Not one I planned, but one that unfolded so neatly, so perfectly, that all I had to do was step back and let gravity do the rest. It was Celine's mom's 65th birthday. I only knew because Camille, yes, Camille again, invited me. Said she understood if I didn't want to come, but Celine's mom had specifically asked if I'd be there. Apparently, Inez had started warming up to me, now that I wasn't around. Funny how that works. I hesitated, for all of 5 seconds, then said yes. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I didn't even tell Celine. I showed up to their home in Boulder wearing a tailored charcoal suit, the kind I usually save for client pitches and industry events. The Tesla purred into the driveway. I stepped out with a bottle of 20-year Glenfiddich and a gift bag containing a handmade glass pendant I'd commissioned from a local artist in Santa Fe. It wasn't expensive, but it was beautiful and unique, just like Inez always said she liked. The party was already in full swing when I arrived. Music playing low, tables set up in the backyard under white string lights, appetizers being passed around on small trays. I walked in, calm and deliberate. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Celine saw me first. She was by the back patio, her eyes catching mine with a jolt like static electricity. She didn't look away. She didn't smile either. Just watched. Inez spotted me next. "Oh my God, Marlon," she said, hurrying over. "You came." She hugged me. A real hug, not a stiff, backpack kind of hug. She stepped back and looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You look fantastic," she said. "What have you been up to?" I gave her a small, modest smile. "Just working. Growing the business. Keeping life quiet and good." She smiled wider. "Well, it shows. You seem light." Franklin came out a few minutes later, squinting in my direction. The second he saw me, his expression twisted. Confused, annoyed, maybe even a little nervous. He didn't say hello. Didn't nod. Just turned and poured himself a drink. I took my time that evening. Talked with Camille, shared a few laughs with old family friends, and offered Inez my gift, which she opened right away and declared absolutely stunning. Then, just as dinner was being served, I took a seat at the large table, right across from Franklin, and next to Celine. She hadn't said a word to me since I arrived, but she'd stayed close, orbiting like a moon unsure of its gravity. Now, this close, I could feel the tension in her posture, like she was bracing for something. Franklin finally broke the silence. "So," he said, poking at his steak, "I hear you've got yourself a fancy car now. A Tesla, right?" I didn't look up from my plate. "I do," I said, tone even. "Model S, Performance Edition." He let out a chuckle, forced and sharp. "That's a lot of car for someone who just scares companies into thinking they need him." The air shifted. I looked up, smiled. "Yeah," I said. "Funny how the market rewards people who know what they're doing." Just closed a 3-year contract with a firm in Austin. Bought the car outright the next day. No payments. No loans. The silence that followed? Electric. Then I turned my head, just slightly, so I was looking right at Celine. And it feels good knowing that I did it without having to ask anyone if I was enough. Just me. No validation needed. Celine didn't flinch, but her eyes told the story. They shimmered. Not with tears, not yet, but with something more raw. Recognition. Regret. Franklin tried to recover. Some of us prefer to invest in practical things, he muttered. I tilted my head. Practical like the Honda with duct tape on the side mirror? Camille snorted. Tried to cover it with her napkin. I didn't push it further. I didn't need to. It had landed. And then, as dessert came out, Celine finally spoke. Quietly, just to me. I didn't know you were coming. I figured. You look different. I am. She nodded slowly. I meant what I said in the letter. I looked at her. I know. She turned to face me. And I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands in my lap. I'm happy, I said simply. Genuinely. For the first time in a long time. That hit her harder than any insult could have. Because it wasn't cruel. It wasn't loud. It was honest. And it was final. I left the party before the music ended. Celine walked me to the front, slowly, like she was still hoping for something. I'm glad you came, she said. I nodded. So am I. She paused. Then, barely above a whisper, asked, would you ever want to talk? For real? No pressure. No expectations. Just talk. I looked at her for a long second. Then I smiled, gentle and kind. I already did. And I got in the car. Drove off into the night. Windows down, cool air in my face, and nothing chasing me for once. No anger. No bitterness. No guilt. Just freedom. The quiet kind. The earned kind. And that was the most satisfying revenge of all.